Hey everybody, PincheAls here, and we're back with another episode here with the VRT Patreon built motor, and we got Ray chilling in the back. So let's get to work because this is PincheAls Garage. So right now we're going to be working on how to install the oil pump, the drive shaft, and the pickup tube or return line. Or is it feed? I can't remember what this one does. But Ray's in the background getting me the torque specs while I work on showing you guys how to get this and the oil pan on here. So first things first, make sure all your surfaces around here are cleaned up. Free of any debris and any type of residue. We actually have a little bit of right here of what's it called, assembly lube that fell into here and also on the pan, so we're going to be cleaning that up in a bit. On top of that, we're going to need to make sure everything is pre-lubricated and lubricated before we do the installation. So this right here is the drive shaft for the oil pump, which goes over here on the back side of the engine. So you have another hole right over here on the front of the engine. We don't use that. That's a feed line. This guy is the drive. There is no up and down to this. You can go whichever side. They're identical in length and identical in diameter, so it doesn't make a difference on which one you put in. This guy, we're gonna just slather on some assembly lube there. That's gonna go all the way down. Okay, we'll put some on top of this guy. Let it make its way down. Okay. So we have a brand new Phoebe oil pump. So this guy right here, this is brand new. We do not reuse our old pump. They're so inexpensive. You're better off just getting a brand new one instead of trying to reuse the old stuff just for safety reasons. Especially if we're gonna go big turbo on a VR6. It's just a good thing to do. Make sure that the surfaces on here are clean and free of debris before you install it, because when you install the new pipe that goes on here, you want this to make sure it has a very, very nice machine surface so it seals really well. There's no gasket that goes here or here. The drive shaft has to line up correctly, and the machine surface on the inside of this guy has to go in nice and smooth. Okay. Double check all your clearances around. Make sure everything that is on here is clear and nothing is touching for safety reasons, and obviously we want to make sure nothing touches here on the engine, especially to create any vibration that might cause some damage, some early premature damage. Get your 2 bolts that mount the oil pump and just put them in by hand. Don't what's the word, don't lock them down yet. Just get them started. Okay. Next is the pipe, which is on here. Here it is. So this is the return pipe right here. Now it only goes in one way. You'll see if I put it this way, it doesn't fit. It goes in this way, just like that. All right. 4 bolts for it in total. Do not put these down to the bottom because they won't line up correctly. You need to have some slack so the pipe actually lines up correctly on this side. Now for this engine, we are using the stock Mark IV VR6 oil pan. We're not using the Mark III one, that's a shallow pan, or the R32 style one. A lot of people ask me why, because we're not super low to the ground, so we don't have to worry about clearance issues. Most people will go with the R32 pickup and then a Mark III oil pan, which gives them about an inch to an inch and a half of extra clearance. If you guys want to go with a shallow pan, this gives you guys a lot more clearance if you guys are going to go really, really low or on air suspension, so you guys don't damage your oil pans, because these sit really low. They sit lower than the subframe from factory, so it's something you guys got to really consider if you guys are going to want to go really, really low on your car. This car is not going to go low. It's not meant to be really low. It's meant to handle. So we're not focusing on stance, we're focusing on actual performance on this car. So, haha, hee hee. Okay, everything's now hand tightened. Has a little bit of wiggle room. We're gonna double check our clearances one more time. So down here, we want to torque this guy to spec first, and then we're going to torque these two and then these two. The reason for this, if I torque this down and this down, this pipe will be a little bit harder to move, because right now it's almost hitting the main stud, which right here. So we want to make sure we clear that before anything else happens. Then it goes onto the pump itself, and then the two on the pump, the two from the pump to the block. So one thing you guys need to know on the Bentley manual, it is required to put some Loctite on the ones that go from the pipe to the block. We're going to confirm if we need them on the pump to the block and then the pipe to the pump. But right now we're doing blue Loctite from the pipe to the block. I'm using a Permatex blue Loctite, FYI, so you guys know. I like this one because it's a gel and it works really, really well. These bolts go on at 10 Newton meters. Did you find it, Ray? The ones from the block. Yeah, okay. That one's 25 Newton meters. And then what about the ones from the pump to the pipe? So, okay. 10 with Loctite. Oh, what about the 25 Newton meters? With Loctite or no Loctite? It just said 25 Newton meters. So 25 Newton meters, 10 and 10, and I'm going to do Loctite with this one and this one, but not on these guys, just to be safe, because these are the same bolts as those. So more likely that should be the same. Oh yeah, because these did have Loctite on them. And the ones from the pump to the pipe have Loctite. So they're getting Loctite. This is why I make DIYs, and I reference my Bentley manual as always. On the previous video, you guys should have a link in the link to the description to my Google Drive, and then you can use the Bentley manual that's in there for reference as well. It's a free download. Enjoy it. There's all the Mark IV Bentley manuals in there. Even some brochures that are pretty cool. So if you guys are interested, make sure you guys check them out. It's on my it's on the previous video that we just did for doing the timing cover. I'll put a link in this description as well in this video, so you guys can download the Bentley manual here as well. All right, so we're going to 10 Newton meters for the two that are here and here. Set. Okay, and then the other one was 25.
Yes.
Barking toads around here. You hear that? Oh man, those barking toads smell foul. Yeah. Do something about that. Alright, so this guy here is 25 Newton meters. And then can you find out what the oil pan is? More likely, I think that was 10. Alright, so now oil pickup is done, it's ready. Installation is done. Now the next step is the oil pan. Okay guys, so next step in your build here is your oil pan. Now this is a nice baffle pan. It's like not super baffled, but it's got a pretty decent baffle here and here. I cannot put RTV on here because I have to pull the pan off later for the turbo oil feed line, but we're going to give you guys a demonstration and walk you through the whole process just so you guys know. Remember, when you guys use RTV, you can use black or gray RTV on the block. If you have OEM, go for it. That's really good. Victor Rains makes a really good oil pan or gasket maker RTV for Volkswagens as well. It's kind of like a reddish color. It's very expensive, it's like 20 bucks a bottle, but it's enough to do the entire engine for certain applications that you need to use it for. Remember, less is more when it comes to RTV. It's very, very little. And when you guys do it, oops, You guys put a bead on here and just smear it with your finger. Don't just compress it into the block. You smear it down. Now you'll see these grooves on these engines, on this valve cover. Oil pan. Make sure you fill the grooves with RTV and you smear it nice and flat. Okay. The grooves are just helping you to put it down. There is a gasket you guys can buy for these. I don't recommend using the gasket. RTV works a lot better on these engines. It's really up to you, but don't over install RTV on any engine, just so you guys know, because it will leak. And once you're done smearing it all around, lay this guy down. Backwards. And what you do when you do your installation of your oil pan, center everything correctly. Literally grab a handful of bolts and you're gonna work your way from the middle out. So you go in here, hand tighten first. So middle, this way. We're not torquing this down to spec. We're just gonna get the pan bolted on pretty much. So I recommend getting the first two in the middle out and then get the corners next. The reason I do this is because a lot of these threads don't straighten out because the pan won't sit perfectly centered, and it gives you an issue with getting the pan like really good. So a lot of times when people put pans on underneath the car, you just put them on and you zip it up with a gun, and what happens is that you might end up cross-threading something. And it's not hard to do that, unfortunately, if you don't center the pan, because what happens is that these holes, if you don't center it and bolt it down by hand, they'll be a little crooked, and you're gonna be like, oh, I'll put it in, and the bolt will go in sideways, and then you're kind of done there. If everything else goes in nicely by hand, you can grab a little gun. You can zip them on slowly if you don't want to do everything by hand. But don't go too quick, because you'll impact them on. All right. So I hand tighten all the bolts on here. The next step that you guys have is to torque it down to spec. And what was it? 10? 15? 15 Newton meters. And then, so the torque, the way I do torque specifications on oil pans, or how to torque them, is I'm going to show you guys, 'cause I'm not going to torque this to spec. I'm taking the pan off literally within like less than a month. So I always start my way in. From the in, and then work my way at opposites, kind of like a lug nut. So I go 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, and then obviously go from opposites until you work your way. So 6, and then you work here, 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 and you obviously you work your way all the way in, and that's it. That's putting your pan on. I've done this way method for years. I've never had a leaky oil pan ever. I mean, knock on VR6s. It's just a method I've been using for a long time. It works for me. If you guys have a better way of doing it, by all means do it. But the specifications is 15 Newton meters for all the bolts around the oil pan. We already got the stuff on the oil pump, and we're done. That's your DIY for your oil pump and oil pan. And then we're gonna work on the next thing is on the front of the engine, the oil cooler housing, the oil cooler, filter housing, crack pipe, and coolant flange and water pump. Pretty much the entire cooling system is next on the engine. And then we're gonna work on the manifold, the intake manifold, the exhaust manifold, the turbo, and the custom lines that we have to make for it before we go any further, before this engine actually goes into a car. That's what's next. So stay tuned for so much more content, guys. Thanks for watching this episode of PincheAls Garage, Patreon built VR6 Turbo. Peace out, and you guys have yourself a wonderful day.